The tradition of excellent care and innovative approaches to healthcare started so long ago and is rooted in really the being of what we are today.
Tucson Medical Center VP Julia Strange is describing the connection between TMC today and when it admitted its first patient 80 years ago. TMC has been recognized as the top hospital in Tucson by U.S. News & World Report. But TMC's mission of providing exceptional health care actually began 100 years ago.
There was groundbreaking work that was going on this site, in this very building, 100 years ago in the treatment of tuberculosis.
Yes, before TMC, there was the Desert Sanatorium. In the 1920s, it began operating as a tuberculosis treatment center and health retreat.
It was very cutting edge. They were doing heliotherapy, which is perfect for Arizona sunny weather.
Heliotherapy is the use of sunlight. Tucson and the Desert Sanatorium became the prescription for those diagnosed with tuberculosis. The Desert Sanatorium's outdoor spaces were used for treatments for nearly 20 years, but fell on hard times during World War II and closed in the summer of 1943.
The community came together and said, we want a community hospital that's focused on the needs of the people who live here. And they raised the money and they opened the doors, and that tradition continues today.
On November 9, 1944, Tucson Medical Center admitted its first patient. 80 years ago, TMC was on the far eastern edge of Tucson.
When it opened, the nurses lived in the Arizona building. That was the nurses' quarters, because it was so far from town. So they would come out, they would stay here, and then they would do their shifts, and then they go back to town.
As Tucson grew, so did TMC. It's now one of the largest hospitals in the state with more than 640 beds. And that's where the history of the Desert Sanatorium could have been lost.
TMC is not in the preservation business. It's in the medical business.
Fortunately, architect Corky Poster and his architecture firm are in the preservation business.
Preservation of the important history of how that medical facility developed is important to the story, but we have to find contemporary uses for those buildings.
That's exactly what TMC and Poster's firm did, restoring and repurposing 3 of the original Desert Sanatorium buildings.
The Erickson building, the patio building, and the Arizona building made up the core of that basically historic origin story of TMC.
At the main entrance to TMC at Grant and Beverly, you'll find both the Arizona building and the patio building. Once the nurses' dorm, the Arizona building's exterior has recently been renovated. Originally the tuberculosis clinic, the patio building now houses administration. To the northwest is the Erickson building, once the home of Alfred and Anna Erickson, one-time owners of the Desert Sanatorium. It also houses administration now. The 3 buildings have recently been named to the National Register of Historic Places.
Well, it's a real tribute to the great architects that actually did this project originally.
Poster points out that the architect for both the Erickson building and the Arizona building is Henry Jostad, a one-time Tucson mayor. Well-known Tucson architect Roy Place designed the patio building. Poster led the 5-year effort to get the historic buildings the national designation.
We are honored to work on the buildings designed by the great masters.
The great masters that made the Desert Sanatorium and Tucson Medical Center absolutely Arizona.